Okay. I'm realizing that we're not going to notice if anybody jumps in this meeting while we're not paying attention, but hopefully nobody joins. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Remix meetup in the Mux office. I'm Matt. I'm one of the, I work here at Mux, actually. I was one of the people that helped start it. It's pretty cool. I organize a conference called Demuxed, which is happening in October. Does anybody in here work with video at all? A little bit, lots of handshakes. Yeah, okay. Does anybody watch videos online? Okay, great, perfect. That's close enough. So yeah, Demux is a conference for people that work with video every day. So if you're building players or streaming video or whatever else, that's a conference for that type of folk. And I also organize a meetup called SF Video, which will actually be here in a couple of days. So if you're like, oh wow, this video stuff is really cool, I'm going to change my career and go to that meetup. See you Thursday night. And yeah, just for reference, I wrote a bunch of the code in Video.js. Has anybody ever used Video.js to play back a video somewhere? I thought I'd get at least one hand on that one. Come on. All right. So yeah, the TLDR here is that I think about video a little bit too much. And unfortunately, not like the videos themselves, the cat videos, but how we stream them, which is less fun. And I also enjoy web dev. So generally these days, it's mostly experiments, not production stuff, which is way more fun, to be quite honest. So lately I've been playing with service workers a lot and experimenting with what we can do with them kind of the status quo, what you see them used for the most use often. Last time I'll do a show of hands here. Has anybody played with service workers at all? Hey, well, that's kind of unfortunate for me. I hope you don't. Okay. This works better in a room where it's like, what's a service worker? Okay, so what are service workers? A lot of the folks in this room have clearly already worked with them, so you know, kind of new-ish, but well-supported browser feature. You intercept network requests, you can do stuff with them. Typically, the use case is progressive web apps, so you want to add offline mode or anything like that, but you can do a lot of other stuff too. So the normal service worker use case, kind of what you see the most often if you're reading a blog post about service workers is, you register the service worker, you intercept a bunch of requests and cache them, and the end. It's boring. How that looks in practice, you add an event listener for the fetch request, and then you basically, instead of responding with that fetch request, you respond with a check in your cache. If that thing is already in the cache, you respond with that instead of going and hitting the remote thing, which is kind of nice. Okay, so before we go on to moving past that, oh, and also let me preface this. I am not a Remix expert. This is just like a general web dev things I've done with service workers. I tried to get this actually working real quick in Remix in time for this. And like, I need to spend a few more weeks with Remix, I think. But we're going to talk a little bit about video streaming and how it works, because that's kind of the part that we're getting into here. So modern video streaming is actually a crap ton of text. So like really it's a very similar playlist to what you would have seen in Winamp back in 1997. Your M308 files are kind of the most common playlist that you see streaming on the internet. That's what Apple's primary streaming protocol is, a Winamp playlist from back in the day. Here's what a playlist ends up looking like. You know, so you've got some pieces of header information up there, then this ext.inf that you see, that's kind of like how long you would expect this chunk of the video to be. And then it's just a playlist of sections of video. So your player downloads this file, it knows, okay, I've got basically 30 seconds of video, and here are the chunks of video that I'll play one after the other. That's HLS in a nutshell. One level higher than this is usually when you're, you know, if you go to Netflix and download the most recent season of Suits, because that's what we're all watching right now, apparently. You would actually download a multivariant playlist, which would give you a list of other playlists. So that would say, here's your 1080p version, or here's your 4K version, here's your 1080p version, here's your 720, 540, all of those different resolutions. And then your player would say like, okay, given my bandwidth constraints at my house, here's what I can support. I'm in a car watching this and I'm going through a tunnel, here's what I can support. And so if you ever are watching video on your phone and it goes from good quality to terrible quality or whatever, it's called adapted bitrate playback. And so it's choosing which one of these playlists to switch between. Okay, so really long way of saying a lot of modern streaming is text files. We can manipulate those text files in the server, which is pretty cool. So my initial experiments is when I started playing with this kind of stuff is like HLS specific caching and preloading. So, one of the downsides of HLS is that there is all these round trips. It's 3 round trips to start playing back a video. You go get the multivariant playlist, then you get your child playlist, then you go get your first segment. So it can be a little bit slower to start up. So if you want to do, say, like smooth scrolling, you want to do a TikTok style smooth scrolling, you don't start loading that next playlist until they actually scroll into it, then it's never going to be as smooth as you want. So you can go get a bunch of manifests, cache the manifests themselves, and then maybe cache the first in seconds of the end segments of that top rendition. So it'd be like, go get a bunch of these, cache the first, that segment 0 across a few of them. And now every time you get to it, it's not loading anything off over the network. So that's pretty cool. And it was, okay, we can filter that multivariant playlists. So go get a bunch of these multivariant playlists and then filter out any renditions below X width, right? So those were neat, useful, but then some actual real world customer questions started coming in. So if I missed this part of the beginning, at Mux, we do video streaming. Surprise. So the questions were things like, hey, I want to seamlessly play back a few videos in a row, which is close to that caching thing I was talking about. 70% of the way to that one. And then the second one was like, no one ever wants to watch my screencast in 240p. Totally makes sense in retrospect. So I have my hammer. I've found this thing and I've got a bunch of nails that are questions. Close enough. Okay, so the first one was filtering resolution. So my thought was like, okay, I'm watching your screencast of your video. You're watching Egghead IO or level up tutorials or whatever other screencasts on programming. It's useless if you can't read the code in the screencast. They're like, my customers would rather rebuffer for 5 minutes and then get the 1080p or 720p version of this video instead of getting the 240. Don't ever show them that ever. Okay, so let's get rid of all those. So we can go get that original playlist. We'll split those playlists by new lines. We will, for each line in that resolution that includes this EXT stream INF, which is the resolution line, we're going to check to see if that's greater or equal to this min resolution that we'll set. If it is, we'll add that line and the next line, which is actually the URL itself, to our new array of filtered lines. And if it's a URL, it's a rendition, so ignore it. Otherwise, pass that line through because it's all those other HLS tags that we were looking at the beginning. And this is all happening in a service worker. So we can say in the service worker, you register it, and then we can do all of this stuff right there without ever having to build a proxy or whatever else. Well, technically we are building a proxy. So I'll kind of gloss through some of this a little bit, but this is kind of the high level. So we want to intercept that playlist. So we'll have our multivariant hosts. Where are we going to go fetch that thing from? That's where we want to set up our listener and what that min resolution that we want to set up is. So we set up this event listener for the fetch event. And then if that host name is equal to that, where we're going to be getting these manifests from, and the URL path name ends with is M38. That's why we know it's one of these playlists. Then we want to respond with instead this fetch and filter playlist function result. And in that we will, we won't get in the weeds here, but basically all this code is doing is exactly what our plan was. We're going to just split a string and then iterate over it. Okay, so then the second idea was like, okay, well, what about this seamless playback idea? So instead of going and doing all this crazy caching, what if we stitch the manifests together? So back in this this version of Zen3.8, there's this thing called a discontinuity tag. So if down here you have this hashtag EXTX discontinuity, and then more of these, what that would be saying is, what that's saying to the player is, when you see this discontinuity tag, throw away everything you know about the video. So like timestamps, all that sort of stuff, reset the decoder, and now start playing this other stuff. So it'll play it back as one video, but you can have, it doesn't have to be, players get weird if it expects video in a certain order and then that changes. So you have to say like, blow everything you know about this video, about the previous segment away, start watching again from this new segment. It's called discontinuity-based stitching. So we can just do that. We can manipulate that in the, so rather than having to build stitching on a server somewhere, we can just do that in the service workers. So our player URL is going to be this like fake stitch host. We're just going to make a fake stitch host up, and then playback ID 1, playback ID 2, those will be like our route params. That's like a MUX specific playback ID, but this could, however, that could be your tag in S3 or something like that. Then our service worker is going to intercept those requests, fetch all of the multivariant playlists. To simplify things, we're just going to work with that highest resolution playlist from each one. Then we'll keep the tags from the manifest the same, and then we'll include we'll just combine all the segments from the child playlists that are being requested, and then slap an endless on the end, which is just something that HLS expects, and then you're done. So interesting thing here is that we're gonna intercept this fake domain, so it can be stitchomatics.foo.example.com, whatever else. We're not actually gonna hit that, remember. And then we're gonna go grab all of those, grab the highest resolution from each of those child manifests, and then we're going to get the highest resolution manifest URL from each one, and then and then we're going to stitch them together. So this is just, you can see if it's the last manifest, push a discontinuity tag. Won't get too far into the details there, but that's kind of it. Like, this code isn't too crazy, but now we've got stitching built right into, like, in the browser without ever leaving it. But what's neat about this, and what I was hoping to get in the Remix side of things, given that Remix also supports this fetch, supports just being able to intercept fetch events, you don't have to do this just in the browser, which makes this interesting. So like, you could build the same functionality, use these same URLs in an app, or like in an actual native application. You don't have to use these in the browser itself, and it would all just work. So all I did here, I was going to do it live, but then I got scared and wanted to make sure it all worked. Just copied and pasted the exact same code. I can share the repo. If anybody's interested in seeing this, I can share the repo. But the exact same code that I was showing snippets from in the demo, the same code that's running in the browser in a service worker, just slap those in a Cloudflare worker or anything else that supports the fetch API. Kind of see that it's just the same stuff. And then grabbed a bunch of HLS manifests. So like, this is one of them. This is a MUX playback ID. This is a MUX playback ID. So let me grab one of these, and then we can so we'll take the end of this one off. This is just like an HLS.js example repo. So if you look, this one's 25 seconds long. And if we paste the rest of these back in there, and you look, now it's 44 seconds long. So in a second, and then in a second, I'll switch to the other video. Just chosen something longer than 22 seconds. There's black frames at the beginning. I promise it's not just something weird happening. And now we're doing the other video. And so then a third video will start playing in a second. So kind of fun thing about this is, yeah, you could build this kind of functionality into your Remix app. Video can be very expensive in terms of, especially if you want to proxy these kind of things, and you want to proxy at scale. Having your endpoints do all of this manipulation itself could actually get pretty expensive at scale if you got if you have enough viewership. Being able to offload this to the browsers themselves, and then only fall back to your edge functions if for whatever reason if the browser doesn't support this functionality, just kind of like a really neat little kind of happy accident. Yeah, that's that. Questions or anything? Hope that wasn't too inscrutable. Last time I gave that talk was at one of the video meetups. So like, the video specific stuff is just like, yeah, okay. Anyway, so JavaScript, which none of you really use very much. A little bit weird doing the inverse of it, but. I have kind of silly about that for you. Oh God. Been working with this for like 15 years. I should know the answer to this question. I don't know. I mean, it's like, yeah, M3. Let me get back to you on that one, but I don't know. But it started. It was a like a audio playlist way before it was ever a video playlist. So. Yeah, intuition for yourself when you would run something just in the back end versus. Do I have intuition? Sorry, repeat that question one more time. So it's like a rule of thumb. Like if I have not that much experience with service worker, if you would have described the problem to me, I would have been like, yeah. I mean, that's honestly like that should probably be the default, but it's like, say you wanted to build, say you were building you're taking down YouTube. You want to build your own YouTube. And now you're starting to build in this kind of like stream manipulation type stuff. Like it could be an interesting little hack here to just not have to pay for that yourself, not have to pay for that compute. Also that all into the browsers, especially if you're doing a lot of, if you want the users to be able to do a lot of user configurable stuff, you can also run code there in the user land, like let them run code in the user land to do things with the video manipulation. That could be kind of cool. But no, I mean, like ultimately it's, yeah. I'm not saying this is the most practical thing ever. I'm just saying it's kind of cool. So some other fun little hacks about that. If you decide you wanted to go start playing with service workers, there are some like little hacks in this I should have pulled in from like an earlier talk, but it's like little things like if you deploy this thing to Vercel and when you're registering your service worker, make sure that you have it add the back trailing slash. Trailing slashes are stripped by default. Make sure you add it. Otherwise, like with service workers, you set up a scope, so it will only register for things below that scope. So you say like, okay, load the service worker for anything under slash videos. So slash videos slash foo.html, that service worker could register an intercept request there. Slash foo slash bar.html, it could request service workers there. It could not at slash example. So it needs to be kind of in that tree. If you don't have that trailing slash, it doesn't include it part of that tree. So you have to include the trailing slashes. And then if you want to do like I did and fake a response from an HTTPS, you actually still in the browser that you were responding to itself with, you still have to have CORS because the browser doesn't actually know that it's not talking to the browser. So fun little gotchas like that, but it's actually pretty straightforward and fun to play around with. But yeah, it's that. Oh yeah. I didn't either. Oh my god. Yeah. So this is from the 2020. Promise this is not planned. There's the other big competing.
I need to get into the Zoom meeting.
Kind of the Android formats. But if you want to support Apple, you have to deliver HOS. So.
Recording in progress.
Everything supports HLS, so therefore, yeah, it should be
Cool. I guess it's working. I need to share my screen, right? Yeah. Cool. Hello again, everybody. I'm glad because Matt, you are also using Arc, right? I think it's kind of cool to use Arc, and you have a space specifically for the meetup, and I did exactly the same. So I was like, okay, good. It was a good idea. Hello, everyone. We're going to discuss about Remix V2. Let me hit the slideshow button. Cool. So let's prepare for Remix V2. First, I'd like to thank the organizer, Andre, and the sponsor, Mux. That's great. It's not the first time here. And pizzas are good, and drinks, and people mainly. So thanks for helping us with this meetup. This is great. I'm Sébastien Morel. I'm CTO at Crystallize. Mainly a backend guy, French. I hope you're gonna get used to my accent, but you know, we only have like 20 minutes, but yeah, you're gonna get it. That's okay. So yeah, moved into San Francisco almost 9 years ago. Happy dad and milliseconds enter. I'm working at Crystallize, and Crystallize, it's an headless commerce company. We're gonna see what it is a little bit, not too much, right? We're gonna talk about Remix, but yeah, it's a GraphQL super fast API to help you build your e-commerce architecture. So we are working a lot with frontend and with Remix. We're gonna see that. But yeah, I'm not a designer. I told you, right? I'm a backend guy, so sorry for that picture, but Remix V2 is actually coming. But what if I tell you that Remix V2 is already there, actually? There is nothing to do to migrate to Remix V2. Really, if you enable the feature flag, you can already do it. So, which is kind of cool. Of course, you have a migration path. You have stuff to do, signatures that are changing, conventions that are changing. We're going to review that. We're going to go and see what are the actual trouble you can get when you want to migrate to a Remix V2 and a little bit more. So first, what's new? What's new in Remix V2? Well, it's mainly, according to me, about developer experience. So you get cool stuff like hot data validation and HMR as well. If you don't know what it is, it's basically the dev server is going to reload by itself when you change the code. And the data validation is you keep the states, whether it's client side or server side. So it's pretty cool and it helps you develop. So again, developer experience. You get a new route convention. This is probably the thing that is the most boring stuff to do, but I'm going to show you a trick to do it in 2 seconds, which is kind of cool. And then it's a lot of performance optimization, bug fixes, and they're trying to make stuff consistent, right? Remix, they want to stay close to the platform, and you know, we're going to see some stuff that are details, but good details, like changing name of some function to make it closer to the platform. Of course, new adapters and some built-in new stuff, like you can play with Tailwind, or you know, you have built-in stuff for post CSS and stuff like that. So we're going to review the main things. So when you want to migrate, you're going to have to pay attention, as I mentioned, to the new file system route convention. That is the first things. We're going to do that live a little bit, just reviewing everything together first. Everything is on the doc. So everything I'm telling you, you can go there. You have even more details on the doc. It's in the link at the bottom of the slide. So this is mainly what you're going to have to do. This slide, it's probably 80% of what you're going to do to migrate to a Remix V2, maybe 90% actually. So file route, convention, headers, and meta function are changing a little bit, but it is returning an array instead of returning one object. There is no more catch boundary. So if you're not using this, you should, but we'll see an example. It's really, really simple to move to the new version, if I would say. Use transition and use feature, they have changed a little bit. It's basically, they have flattened the array that you get when you do use feature and use transition, but it's exactly the same feature, just wording and flattening the result. And you get this new Remix CLI that you can enable as well. Then the little details that I was mentioning, normalization and wordings mainly, right? For instance, for method, it's now uppercase instead of lowercase or uppercase. image sizes and image src set are now camel case, these kind of things, renaming of the configuration, dev server port to dev.port, simplifying everything. So it's really about developer experience. And you can now also export everything as an ESM, which can be useful depending on where you deploy and depending on what you want to do. So those are, to me, the minor changes, because you don't have to change all that stuff for very simple project. It really depends on your project. So some tricks how to do that. So first, it starts like this. When you want to enable the feature flag, you actually go to the remix config.js file and you enable what you want to enable. The funny part is, if you install remix 1.19.3, I guess now, you already have that. So by default now, they're already enabling those feature flags because, well, why not? Why not, right? We don't like migration most of the time. So we're going to do that together. This is a one-liner, a little script I made to actually migrate the route automatically. So we're going to see that in action. I wanted also to remind everybody that when you're doing remix, the routing is based on the file system, but it doesn't have to be. You can trick the routing that you want. Actually, in that same file, in the remix.config.js, you can actually play with the routing system and be a little bit more, customize a little bit more if you want. About the headers and the meta function, it is really going the good way, according to me, going the remix way. It's basically simple, simpler than before. If you don't have any header function or a meta function, it's going to look to the parent route. And if there is a header function there, that's going to be used. So it's going to help you to share actually the headers or the meta when you're using the nested layout system. Okay. This is just what you need to remember. Actually, it's really simple. Catch boundary, we mentioned it earlier, so it's gone. You cannot, it's just gone. You just replace this by this piece of code, and that's it. So this is coming from the doc. I'm not inventing anything, just a copy paste from the documentation. But basically, you have a if is route error response. You do something. This is what was catch boundary. Otherwise, you do what you want to do based on the exception that you've thrown or the error that has been thrown. And that's pretty much it. So let's have a little demo of all that stuff. So to do the demo, I'm going to show you a Remix V1 project, and I'm going to use that to do a little bit of promotion of Crystallize. You see, because we are actually providing a boilerplate based on Remix that you can install in 5 minutes. So we're going to run that on the side while we're looking at the Crystallize API a little bit. So this is live. Wish me luck. We're going to just create an empty project, Remix live demo. I'm going to go there. And right now, I'm just going to install demo, right? So this is installing the Remix boilerplate of Crystallize. This is actually a CLI that is based on Ink. I don't know if you heard about that library. It's to do React in the CLI. But this is really cool. You can do stuff. See at the bottom, it's actually changing. It's a React app in the CLI. So we're going to install the Remix tenant, the Remix boilerplate, and I'm going to use my own tenant, FR to make it fast. Then we're going to keep that on the side, and I'm just going to show you a little bit of what I'm installing right now. So this is a boilerplate. Everything is open source. This is just a shop. It is based on Remix, where you can display, you know, your product. You have a checkout process. You can pay. You have a search. I mean, you have a variant selector. You can add to cart. So this is really, really a simple shop that is not built on top of Shopify, but on top of Crystallize, but still using Remix. And so Crystallize, it's, you know, when you register, it's fully SaaS and headless. You just register, get access to this UI, where you can create your catalog. We're trying to make the UI fancy, so you know you can edit your variant, create the content, drag and drop the image. You have different views if you want to be more efficient. It's multilingual, and then you get the GraphQL API to, to get the data that you want. Let's see if this Remix project is installed. Yes, that's it. So it's done. See, still fancy. I have my Remix application that is there, and I'm gonna npm run dev. I'm gonna run that, and it's gonna connect to Crystallize, and on my Remix application. Cool. Ooh. So now we have a Remix application, which is a Remix v1 application. So nothing fancy here. Oh, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So this is what you know, right? I mean, I hope you've all installed a Remix application before. What I do like to do all the time is to rename the app folder into SRC. I don't know, it feels more like home. But yeah, this is what we have, and we're going to use that to actually compare what we have to do with the route. So let's do this. I'm actually going to go back on the slide. So we said that the main hassle was actually the route migration. Because if you read the doc, what you need to do to migrate a Remix project, all those folders must be flattened out in a huge list of files with a convention. Some has to start with underscore, some has to end with underscore. Every slash in the URL must be a dot and the file name. So it's kind of it's a pain to do it, especially when you have a big project. It's a pain. So first, let's do something simple. I'm going to go to a very simple page like the shop product page and look at the header function here. So the change, if you want to migrate to Remix v2, it's to actually to import. So I cannot do that because I didn't install the last, because it's Remix v1 here, but you change the import, and instead of returning an object, you actually return an array. That's it for the meta, and for the header, it's really the only things to do. I'm going to show you because I think it's better if you see it. This is what I prepared. So I'm going to show you a already installed new version of Remix. And regarding the route, the header, this is mainly the change. So meta function, you return an array instead of an object. And for the header function, the signature is not changing actually. You get access to the parent header if you want, but if you define that header function at this level, it's going to be used. If you don't define it, then the parent root function will be used. So this one will be used. That makes sense? So it's really simple. Just for nested layout, sometimes you don't want to rewrite the header function and the meta function all the time because it's just boring to do it. And also you can forget, right? If you forgot, someone else can create a page, it's somewhere in the nested layout, and they don't know that they have to rewrite this header function. Now they don't have to do that anymore because the parent function will do it. Why is it interesting? The header, because you can do HTTP cache stuff, which is kind of cool when you're working with Remix because you have a server. Because you have a server, you can do HTTP cache, and HTTP cache is working on top of headers. That's why this function is important. But this is simple. Let's have a look at the route. So see, the route should be all nested. So I'm going to go into GitHub, and I'm going to fetch this function that I built for you. So just a gist, right? Or gist, I don't know. You can just copy paste this and run it in your folder. So I'm going to go into my v1 application, and I'm going to actually run that stuff. Of course, it's open source. You can check the code before to run anything that ends by bash in your local machine. It's always good to go and check because you could do bad stuff there, right? And if you read the doc, you'll notice that the first argument is actually the route folder, and the second argument is the destination. So in my Remix v1 application right now, this one, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is SRC route. And I'm going to dump everything into SRC route v2 so we can compare. So SRC route into SRC route 2. That's it. I've migrated my route in Remix v2. Thanks. That's it. That's pretty much it. Right? I have nothing else to say. No, I mean for this feature, but yeah. So that's pretty much it. So here the script is actually taking care about if it's a parent, I mean a nested folder, if it has to add the underscore, if it adds to trick the naming based on the convention. So it's basically following the rule of the convention that you can find again in the documentation in here. The convention is quite huge actually. So they have an example and a bunch of rules that are explained somewhere. Maybe it has moved, but yeah, at some point you have a very big explanation. Yeah, exactly this stuff. So the script that you have in GitHub is actually doing that for you. I hope it's working. I'm the only one using it probably for now. But we've migrated a bunch of projects already, and this is working pretty cool. And that's pretty much the only thing that you need to do to migrate your Remix project. That's it. It's actually too easy. So when I prepared this talk, I said, okay, maybe it's not enough, right? Let's add a little bit more because the Remix v2 project, I mean, the Remix v2 migration, it's to enhance developer experience, right? So it's not enough for me to migrate to Remix v2. Actually, when you create a project, you may want to organize your project in a way that your team can work on the long run with Remix, but maybe with someone else, something else. So I have a little bit more for you. Remix is a backend front-end framework, right? Which means that you have a server to do your front-end, right? And it's cool because you can actually talk to your database directly from the loader, right? If you want to. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying that if you want to talk to your database, you can do that. You want to create an API, you have API routes as well, right? So you don't necessarily need to actually use Remix to build the front end, right? You can do API. A lot of people are doing that with Next, right? They have /page/API or something, which again, might not be something that you want to do all the time, but you usually want to start ASAP when you start a project. So you have the server, you can create an API, you can render your front end, it could be performance, and you have a good developer experience. Why not starting this project with Remix and not decoupling the backend and the front end? Because you can do it later. But if you want to do it later, it doesn't mean that you cannot do it right. I'm a huge fan of Daft Punk. Doing it right, it's one of the songs. So I thought it was cool to put that in the slide. And how do we do it right? They're French, by the way. Look how we go. So how do we do it right? Well, by using a monorepo. Okay. Some people, they don't like monorepo. Some people are liking monorepo. I think monorepo can be great in this situation where you can have many different apps. You can have, I don't know, 2 front ends and different, service API, service layer. A lot of people have different names for that. You can have also CLI or tasks that have it's not an API, it's not a front end, it's just something you want to run, like, DB migration, something else. And you can have cron jobs, but you want to decouple actually the code, right? It could be run in Remix in the same server, but maybe you want to decouple the code. And how do you do that correctly? To me, most of my project, and personal project and what we're trying to do at Crystallize, it's we have application, we have the libraries that are actually shared, reused within the monorepo. I'm not talking about library that we are using across the company. I'm talking about in the monorepo. Then we have the infrastructure stuff, connection to the database, notification. It's if you know about domain-driven development, it's a little bit of that. And then we have domain folder where it is actually the use cases, the business logic of the app. And I want that to be decoupled. So if one day I want to get out of Remix from my API, I will never go out of Remix for the front end. I will always keep Remix for the front end. But for the API, I might want to run my API somewhere else. And I could create a very simple Coa.js API, right? And reuse my domain and reuse my libs. And I want to keep that organized, right? So this is just repetition of what I just said. That's really cool. So how do we do that? So we actually use PNPM because it's fast, it's cool, it's trendy, but I do think it's fast and it's well done because we're going to need a workspace to do what I'm going to describe. And then we're going to use Turbo Repo. It could be any kind of things. You can use Next if you want, but Turbo Repo is really simple. And what I like with Turbo Repo is you can actually have a package.json that is specific per libs, per project, per app. You can also do that with NX, but I don't know, I prefer Turbo Repo for that. And Makefile, because Makefile is a way to abstract the script that you need to run as a developer with your team. So your team, they don't have to understand or to know that we're using NPM. I really don't like that when you have to know yourself if you need to run yarn, NPM or PNPM. It should be completely abstracted in my way. So at the company, what we're doing is we have make serve, make code clean, make test, and we don't know what is underlying. It's all the time this command in each repo that we have. So we try to have this convention. So the project organization, when it's all installed, we're going to see a live project. It's going to end up like that. Your package.json on the front-end app A, for instance, you get the, Crystallize wild library, whether it's open source or not, remix stuff. And then you can access the other libraries of your monorepo doing this, workspace, column, star. This is PNPM managing that for you. It's not even Turbo. And that's pretty much it. With a little gem here. I don't know if you know about volta.sh, but it's quite cool to manage a different version of soon PNPM, but Node, Yarn, etc. So working with different team and different project and client project as well, it's good to be able to switch between node version. So anyway, so I'm going to show you an example, but when you're doing that with Remix, you have to tweak a little bit Remix. Because for instance, if you are working on the domain library, you still want your server, your Remix server to reload when something is changing, right? And by default, the Remix server is only looking into the Remix folder. So if you have another lib somewhere else, you actually need to tell Remix to do it. And I'm going to explain right after this why I'm actually looking at the build folder instead of at the source code folder. And then probably is the library that you can do, they're going to be ESM only. So again, you have to tell Remix that those library are ESM. So let's have a look on a real project of this organization. So this is an internal tool, so I'm not going to run it, but this is a tool that we're using to track everything we're doing and many things. It's called Bossman. And this is a monorepo. So we have is it big enough? It's big enough, right? So we have actually the turbo.json file. Very simple. You just have to follow the doc, to be honest. And you have the target, and we don't want to use cache to make it simple here. It's not big enough to actually want to do fancy stuff with the cache. And then we have the PNPM workspace, where you actually describe all the packages that you have. So libs / something, tools, infrastructure, domain, like I explained, and the different apps. So in terms of folder, it's kind of easy. You have the different apps. So here we have 2 Remix applications. Bossman, this one is Remix, and it's already V2. This one is V2 for sure. This one is another Remix. And those are bots. So CLI stuff that are running, never ending running, workers, as you may name them. This is, anyway, those are bots. The Slack bot and stuff like that, that is running in the company. All in the same monorepo. But most of the stuff that Remix server is doing, it's actually empty because they are actually requiring functions that are in the domain, the business logic of what we're doing. This is where we organize everything. Contract is the interface, and the use case are actually what the project is actually doing, like, I don't know, fetching the PTO, fetching the reaction on Slack, working with shortcut. We have a, the project management system that you're using is shortcut, this kind of stuff. And the organization, so yeah, that's pretty much it. This is what I wanted to show you. This organization is quite cool because if one day I want to extract the backend, I mean, when I say the backend, I should say the API from the backend. I could just create another app and still require the same stuff from the domain, thanks to PMPM. And yeah, so that was for Turbo. And for the Makefile, I just wanted to show you an example of a Makefile. It's pretty cool, actually. If I go there, we're trying to have a Makefile for everything. And you can auto-document the Makefile. So when I do make, boom, I have the available target as a developer. When I join the company, I'm a trainee or not a trainee, I can just make build, make serve. It's just working. So I said I would explain why in the remix file, we actually watch the build folder. It's because when you work on this, when you have many libraries, you want to compile those libraries all the time. So you actually watch them, they change the build, and actually remix is actually watching the build instead of the source code. Because if you don't do that, you're going to have a lag, because remix is going to look at the code, but it is using the build. So it has to reload when the build is actually finished on each of the library. That make sense? Yeah. So that's yeah, that's it here. Remix. So this one is much bigger. So we have a lot of things. We're using D3, and those are all ESM. So you have to list them all. But Remix is crashing if you don't do it. So it's pretty simple not to miss one, because when you run the Remix server, it's going to say, oh, this is an ESM only. You should add it to the list. Okay. So the watch pass, as I mentioned. Tailwind, we discussed it a little bit. And the Makefile, yeah, Makefile is pretty simple. Create the target, you abstract the things that you want to run, and you are good to go. So that's how I think a project should be organized, because again, you prepare for the future where you should actually decouple the backend from the front end. So that's it. That's it for me. I hope you enjoyed it. Do you have any question? Oh yeah. Yeah. Are you following me on Twitter? Because I think it has been built a while ago. No, I'm kidding. No, but actually, I don't. It would be great to test it and see if it's correctly done and if I didn't miss anything. Yeah. I have a question for you. Are you using monorepo in your company? Yeah. So the trend is, oh no, okay. I don't know, because some people are moving out from monorepo. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can show you a little bit more of how I'm trying to do that. It's not easy because it's company-wise, right? So I have some that are very easy. So at Crystallize, we are providing boilerplate, a lot of boilerplate with Next.js, Nuxt, Gatsby, Remix, all that stuff. It's one big monorepo for all the boilerplate that we're providing. So it's open source. It's on the side. It was one. Then we have another one, super fast boilerplate. So this is another kind of tooling that we propose to our client/partner. It's everything that I showed you in the CLI. You can do it online by click, click, click. You can just duplicate a project to showcase to your client. And this is another set of boilerplate that we have on the side. So it's another monorepo, easy. Bossman, it's completely a project on the side of the product itself. It's for KPIs inside the company, Slack bot and stuff like that. So basically the answer is there is nothing to share between them. So it doesn't have to be in the same monorepo, I would say. The product is actually in Crystallize backend. Everything else is it's kind of side project within the same company. But it's always a battle to know if we should put it in the monorepo. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it could be a mess also to have everything in the monorepo, a mess to work with your coworkers, because I don't know. How do you do when you merge? I don't know. Some companies have everything in one monorepo, right? And I just feel like someone can do very bad stuff and merge bad things if you don't have a very good process of pull request and reviewing and just testing, right? If you don't have a good CI. So yeah, it's never easy to know if you need to add in a monorepo. Because then you come back to the monolithic approach somehow, right? Somehow. Anyway. Cool. So thank you again. See you next time. Should I leave?